Hello and welcome back to the Day Luna Human Design Podcast with your hosts, Dana and Shayna. We are back and we are live. I mean, I guess not live, but up to date because all of the podcasts that we've been releasing were pre recorded before I gave birth. And now we are here post birth in real time to give you the update. So many people have been asking about my birth story, about the birth portal, about everything that has occurred to bring Ayla, our precious baby, into the world. And this has been a long time coming. It's been a few months now, and I have been kind of just waiting till the time felt right. My G center is like about to burst, and also so are my boobs. And that's the kind of episode this is about to be. This is the real shit. This is the real talk about giving birth, at least for me, about becoming a parent as a projector. And just, a heads up if you're, while you're tuning in here in the beginning, that we're going to be talking about, things that might be triggering if you are someone who is trying to conceive or is currently pregnant or maybe has gone through a traumatic birth experience. Use your authority when listening to this episode because obviously I'm speaking from my own experience, but if now's not the right time to listen to this, that's great. Like come back when it is or never do. It's totally fine. But I want to talk about the real shit that we go through as moms, as women in, this body in this time. And with all the information that we have at our fingertips, how still unsupported we are as women and as mothers. And I want to talk about the shit that no one told me that I'm shocked that I found out in real time. And I'm like, how did nobody tell me this? So this episode's going to be real and raw. We're also going to get into some things about Dana's, update in her life living as a mermaid this whole time. And um,
You can
yeah,
call me Auntie Mermaid. That's my new
Aunt
chapter that
Mer.
I'm in. Aunt Mer.
Aunt Mer, that's not as cute, huh?
No. Yeah, I mean, this is
Yeah.
such a big episode. It's been a long time coming. It's almost such a huge topic and such a huge update that it's like, where do we even start? And how do we even give it justice? But one thing I'm really, really grateful for about this podcast and about our voices together as friends is the fact that we can be truly honest. We have this platform to really actually share something radically honest. And I think that that is one of the most powerful medicines there is. And I have definitely been conditioned in my life as a woman to not complain, to always be happy and grateful and cheerful, and to not like, I put in quotes, bitch about something or complain about something, right? Like you're alive, you should be grateful. And plus, no one likes a woman who is being too honest or talking about things that are gross or unfavorable, like all these conditioned things. And that in large has led to just a lack of voices that are really truly being radically honest about motherhood, about being a woman in general, about being in a physical body. And I think it is healing AF to actually share that stuff and to go in. And I'm just really excited and grateful to listen and to just dive right in.
Yeah, it's so interesting. I had an angel reading, which Dana had before and then recommended to me. And I had this angel reading maybe 6, 7 weeks postpartum. And in it, she said that my angel said one of my biggest um, strengths and I guess reasons for choosing all of the my design and the reason why I'm here is to be radically honest and to be super vulnerable and authentic and talk about the real shit, talk about the real things and not sugarcoat things, and that actually requires a lot of strength to do. It requires a lot of bravery, but I don't feel like I'm being brave when I'm talking about these things. I feel like it's like, how could I not talk about these things? But I do see, when I'm sharing some details about my birth experience with other people, I see people get uncomfortable. I see people get,
Mhm.
tighten up and feel like, oh, we shouldn't talk about trauma. We shouldn't talk about things that are hard and difficult because we should just talk about what kind of stroller is best or what kind of, you know, carrier you're going to get or how much they're sleeping through the night right now. And, you know, to completely just sweep over the real stuff just feels so fake to me. And I'm not calling anyone fake. I know like there's definitely not been space created for women to use their voices and talk about these things because we're all so deeply conditioned to feel awkward around it. So I'm ripping off the band-aid. I'm doing what I'm meant to be doing, apparently, according to my angel. Um, by by sharing vulnerably and opening up some space for other people to do the same. That's definitely been a big theme in my life is like leading and creating a wake behind me where there's more room for people to grow and share and shine. And we all do that, right? In every single choice that we make to be honest or to be vulnerable or to live our purpose or use our gifts or take up space, we create more space for other people to do the same. And as we move towards this new paradigm, it's imperative that you are taking up your space, that you are being seen uniquely as yourself, that you are being vulnerable, because that is going to be the thing that stabilizes you as things are changing so rapidly. So let's get into it. My birth story. I don't even know where to start, but I definitely feel like throughout my pregnancy, I felt really disconnected from my guides. And that was something that was really shocking to me. I thought that I was going to be, pregnant and feel like this portal and this, the universe in my womb and feel so connected to my, spirituality and the energies and the cosmos and so magical and divine throughout the 10 months that I was pregnant, and I felt a complete block the whole time. And I was like, what is going on? I don't understand. It's this such a physical experience that I'm like just trying to get through the day to day. And my body's so exhausted just trying to exist right now and create this life that my spiritual energy felt like it was pouring into my baby without me feeling that connection myself. Um, and when I got this angel reading, that my angel said that the reason why I felt so disconnected was because um, this was a time for me to learn how to be in a physical body, and that my daughter needs somebody who's not just spiritually strong, mentally strong, etherically strong, but is also physically strong and going through these lessons of having a physical body. And if you've been listening to this podcast for a while, you'll know that I've said so many times, I feel like I don't have a body. And, looking at my human design chart, I just have my G center and my throat defined. And I feel my throat, I feel my G center, but my body is just like swept up in the breeze and like who even knows if it's here or not, like what's even real, right? And so this experience definitely, the lessons that I'm learning are very physical, are very I don't want to say 3D, but kind of in the sense of where I've been existing my whole life. It's really bringing me into this present moment, into the real shit that's happening with my body and having to face it whether I want to or not. Um, so yeah, they've been hard lessons. This has been a very challenging time for me, but and I'm still in it, right? Like I am still in this time. The lessons are still showing themselves to me. I'm sure in 6 months when I record another episode, I'm gonna be like, I didn't even realize this, this, and this. And actually the lesson that I've been learning is this. But where I'm at right now is definitely finding my physical strength and learning how to love my physical body through challenges and physical hardship. Um, so and now it's so funny now that I've given birth, I do feel really connected back in spiritually and with my guides and in meditation and things like that. But when I was pregnant, I just had no energy for that or channeling through me in that way, which was really interesting. So, yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting. I'm sure a lot of people resonate with what you're saying. And I've also heard a lot of people say the opposite, that like being pregnant is the most spiritual time ever because they feel that their body is this sacred portal in this womb, all of those things. And I just think it's so important to remember that every single one of us has these big, important karmic reasons connected to different circumstances in our life. So even if you're experiencing the same physical circumstance, like for example, being pregnant, your karmic reasons behind it are going to be so different. The things that you feel are going to be different. I think it's just such a really important reminder to never make assumptions about what other people are experiencing, but to really ask and to feel it. And I mean, I think it's so fascinating for you specifically, Shayna, having known you for so long and you being just like this, such a spiritual, like etheric being and barely even knowing that you have a body or even having awareness of a body. Like, I just think it's fascinating that this is part of what this lesson was for you. And your daughter is, she was big when she was born. When you were carrying, she's big. Your husband is tall and you're this tiny woman. So I was like, wow, this is a physical challenge and a half. Like, just all of the different circumstances are so different. But I think that it's really fascinating to have that clarity and also to receive it from your angel and the guidance and the timing and the chain of events that just help all of those greater, like deeper karmic understandings come to light. I think it's really fascinating.
Yeah, and I think it's given me a lot of reverence for women and our physical bodies and the the transformation that happens, that is so intense and quick, right? Like this amount of transformation that happens in our physical body happens in 10 months. And then, maybe 2 years postpartum, you're still experiencing these radical changes. And that's, more change than a male's physical body will go through in their whole lifetime. So it's just so like you're thrust into it and you are in the shit, you're in the muck, if you will, of
Hmm.
being in a physical body, of being in this 3D, like, okay, I chose to be a human and I chose to, my soul chose to want to give birth. And this is the muck of really being here and really
Yeah.
going through this.
And I think it's wild. I mean, one of the biggest takeaways from me witnessing and holding space for you going through pregnancy and also for our dear friend, Spirit Sis, like seeing the two of you and seeing the differences in your journeys, but seeing the extreme challenges, like extreme challenges of your journeys, it just struck me that this isn't a conversation that applies to every single human, whether you identify as male or female, or whether you have male or female bodies or genitalia, whether you decide to have a kid or not, it literally doesn't matter. This conversation is important for every human because every human was born. Every person on earth came into the world in some way through a womb and through a birth experience that was either, completely different and with all level of variety, but also a commonality that we all share. So this is a conversation that we all need to listen to because we all were born. It is a key and crucial part of life. And there aren't that many things that are completely universal that we all share, but being born and dying are the number two biggest things that we share. So this conversation, I mean, this is something that I felt so deeply. Like anyone who asked me, how are you? I'd be like, well, my best friend and business partner is having a baby. And I would even share the real and not care if I was invited because I was like, this is something that every person needs to hear. Like we need to know, we need to have a deeper level of respect for birth, knowing that it is this insane physical miracle that was the only available portal to invite us all into a living experience.
Yeah, and the intensity of that portal, like, even, for Brian was so intense, and, there's things that happened that, he really shook him to his core, that it's, whether you are male or female or whatever, the intensity of that experience of being born, right? But also then being there as birth is happening, there's this reverence there, but there's also this like, holy shit, like this is what it it takes to bring a life into
Yeah.
the world. And why are there well, how do we even exist? Like why wasn't there just the first person to give birth and they're like, nope, not
This
doing
is
that
not
again.
gonna work. This
Like,
is we gotta do it a different way.
yeah, because
This barely works.
I kept feeling the whole time like, holy shit, like this is not how I thought birth was. Like on my, on a different planet where I'm from, like it was way different. Like you're just like thought into existence and then you just like
Uh-huh.
glitter and shine out. Like it's
I
not
kept
this
thinking
mucky and gritty.
I kept thinking, why did we get rid of the egg? I would really like to give
Yeah.
birth to an egg. It seems like a
And then
better shape.
tend to the
It se
egg.
we could keep it warm. Actually, I listened to a podcast recently of why we got rid of the egg, because it's then the mother can't be able to hunt and you have to like stay with the egg and another predator could come and eat it while you're gone. But I'm like, I feel like it could be okay. Like an egg would be a better system.
At this point, if we could go back to the egg, I think it'd be
Would be
really
pretty good.
cool. Like
Way
if I could
better.
just like pop an egg out and then
'Cause
tend to
that
it for 10 months and like
yeah,
it
yeah.
grows and then it hatches and then like the baby's even happier because they were hatched. I keep
Yeah.
thinking that when I'm looking at Ayla, like she is literally thinking like, this is fucked up. Like, why can't I speak? Like, how come I don't know how to use my arms and my hands? Like, the last place I was born, literally, I popped out and I knew this shit. Like, this is fucked that I'm not coordinated yet. Like, I literally see that in her face. That's like, hold on, what planet did I choose? Like, I chose Earth. Like,
And
fuck.
can we just talk about her for a second? Like her the day that she was born, her eyes were so open and she was so aware and perceptive, and you could feel looking at her, looking at the world, you could feel her old soul. You could feel her thoughts and her level of awareness. You could feel her like ancient wisdom. I swear that I'm not biased.
Yes.
Like, I swear that you could feel those things and gave me goosebumps on my whole being. And I was having this experience. I was talking to Shayna about this, that I was in summer mode and I was taking my father-in-law out to this like music where it's all these like seniors that are dancing together, seniors and babies, like their grandkids. Those were the only people in the entire crowd. And I'm watching like all these old people and all these little tiny babies dancing and playing together and interacting with one another. And I was just thinking about like the cycle of life, because that's a big thing that I've been experiencing lately is like my parents, my husband's parents getting older and needing to step in and help them more. And that circle of life where like you get old and then you start to lose cognition, you start to lose some of your physical ability, and you almost revert into like this childlike state, right? And at the very end of your life, you even are almost just like a baby needing full time care and support and needing to be back in the bed like you were just when you were born. And having that realization, I realized that nothing is a linear line. Everything is a circle, everything is cyclical. So at the end of that, right, is once again being born with all of that wisdom. So it's like these old people that have this baby like quality or childlike joy. And then there's these babies that have the wisdom of an elder that come
Yeah.
in. They can't express it yet, but these babies are like wiser than we are because they are so much more closely connected to what's on the other side of the veil. They are so much more closely connected to remembering their multidimensional existence and everything they've ever experienced. And they can't write it down, they can't speak it, they can't move their body to show you, but you can feel that they're like the most ancient of us all, even though
Yes.
they're this fresh little being. And I was just kind of like tripping about how I'm in the middle of that cycle and I'm observing both sides, the people in my life that I love that are elders going back into that childlike state, and also these babies coming in that have this wise and ancient soul. And the circle of it all felt really unifying. It's like these stories matter for everyone because we're all in that loop. We're all in that wheel together.
Yeah. Yeah. I have chills as you're saying all of that because I swear, like, Ayla has an undefined head and Ajna, she has a really defined chart. So for, if you're curious what her chart is, she's a 3-5 sacral generator and she has a defined spleen, a defined sacral, G center, throat, root.
An
The only
ego,
an ego, yes. And her
defined ego,
only
baby.
I know, and she knows her worth. She knows
And
what she
she's a
deserves.
quad left. All four of her variable arrows are left facing.
Yes, and a triple split, which is also rare, like her auntie Dana. And so her only undefined centers are her solar plexus and her head and her ajna. And I literally see her reading my mind. Like I will be nursing her and she will look at me and I'll be thinking about something that I'm stressed out about. And I literally see her like roll her eyes like, bitch, that's not important. Like, like what's important is being here, being present right now. What's important is like you're feeding me and we're connecting. What's important is like you're in this raw state. Like I literally feel like I can hear her thoughts because I have an undefined ajna and head, but she I swear I think things and she hears it and she reacts and she has this wisdom like you're saying that just like I see it so clearly and yeah, that bitch judges me for sure and
She is an eye roller. She
yeah,
will roll her eyes at you.
cuz she's beyond like literally her coming out of my body. She had her eyes open like it's imprinted into my brain the visual of her eyes open and literally like turning her head looking around. She was born with neck strength like Brian and my mother-in-law who's been here this whole time and she's incredible. Um she's like I swear she has been lifting her head up since day 1. Like she really has. And she came out looking around like, "Oh shit. This is what I signed up for." Like, here we go, starting at ground
Uh-oh.
zero. And I think that a big part of this journey that's been surprising for me is how much I feel like a baby myself. A lot of things that I've read are like, giving birth, you're not just giving birth to the baby, you're also giving birth to the mom. And it's a rebirth for the mom. And, reading that beforehand, I thought like, okay, yeah, like I get that. And I've had rebirth experiences, I put in quotes, like where I feel this new chapter, whether it's in a breathwork experience or a plant medicine experience or just, my own spiritual journey where I feel like, oh my gosh, okay, this is a rebirth for me. But it's not like that. It's a rebirth in the most physical sense for me, um, where I literally felt and feel like I don't know anything. Like literally, I am such a baby that I don't know how to eat. I don't know how to sleep. I don't know how to get out of bed. I don't know how to hold her while I'm also trying to pick something else up. Like I don't know how to regain any of my emotional, mental, spiritual, physical health. Like I felt like so new and like I didn't know anything that was a big challenge for me because I felt like, am I going backwards? Like, is everything that I've ever learned or, you know, um, that I've been proud of just like completely gone or meaningless or not useful to me in this time of my life? And that was really challenging because it felt just like, well, then what's the point? Like, if nothing that I've, done to better myself is helping me here, I just feel like such a like infant, like literally don't know how to use my hands. It felt like, then what's the point? And so really realizing like I am a baby right now and I wouldn't beat up my baby emotionally, mentally, and spiritually. I would know that they're a baby and that it's okay to be a baby and to let myself be a baby in this time. And the harshest critic throughout this whole experience has been myself, because I feel like I've been very spiritually strong and emotionally strong and mentally strong to, you know, through all the things that I've gotten to experience and learn about myself and about, the cosmos and the world and all the things, that then being kind of cut off and thrust into just such a mucky physical experience, it it felt like that is the lesson that I need, because it's the one side that I haven't really tapped into. So, getting into my birth story,
Let's
did you want
go.
to add to that?
No, I just wanted to say that I was watching this video of a Moroccan elder speaking about giving birth. And she said that from her perspective, when the mother gives birth, she actually dies and goes into a metaphorical coffin for 40 days. And that it's very, very important for everyone in that mother's life to not only celebrate the birth of a baby, but to mourn the death of a mother for 40 days. And then at the end of that 40 days, she is reborn again. She comes out of the coffin, she comes up through the earth. And now we have a baby that's 40 days old and a mother that is 1 day old. And that really struck me because that 40 days is something that I've read a lot about, like from Ayurvedic culture and from ancient Chinese medicine. Like that 40-day period is just like, you must be in bed. Don't expect yourself to do anything. Like it's just this like in between moment. But I mean, that is something that I think is, the words that I just said, I think a lot of normal people, I want to say, would be a little bit offended to hear like just those words because it sounds severe. But I think it seems like something that if we had more awareness of that, if people like I felt a lot of the time too, like I wish that I had more education in my life around how to support a woman who just gave birth. Like I really don't know, and we're all figuring it out, and because we're afraid to use harsh words for the harshest experience of our life, we just don't know how to really wrap our heads or hearts or minds around it.
Yeah. And, for a lot of people, it's an amazing experience, right? It's like, and it was still an amazing experience for me. Don't get me wrong. Um, However, I feel like all of the things that I've really seen, and most of them are like, you either, give birth on a cloud and it's super, you know, amazing and incredible and like the most spiritual experience ever, or it's like really traumatic and you almost die. Like it's one or the other. And like there's
There's
no room
no
for
in
anything in
between.
between. Yeah. And it's like
Choose your journey, your karma will choose it for you.
yeah. And so many people come out of birth like, wow, that was magical and I can't wait to do it again. Or even if they don't feel like I can't wait to do it again, they're like, that was a really, powerful experience. Um, and so talking about that in between space, right? And that's definitely where I think I was in this journey. And I think possibly because I was already so etherically strong that this wasn't like the most spiritually revelatory experience for me. However, that might change in 2 years, right? I might have a completely different perspective. But right now, where I'm at, um, so my body would not go into labor on its own because I had a LEAP procedure, maybe 5, 6 years ago, and where they removed a lining of my cervix. And so since I had that, I had scar tissue there, which I didn't know about. And my body, basically, my water kind of broke when I went into labor. And it was just like a trickle, but I had gone into labor and delivery just to get a cervical check because I hadn't ever had one up until that point. And so they were like, "Oh, your water's broken. You have to stay here." And I was having contractions, but they weren't intense, like they weren't painful or anything, but they were every like 2 to 3 minutes. Um, but they weren't painful at all because my body wouldn't dilate because of the scar tissue. I found that out later. Um, but first thing I want to say that nobody fucking told me is what a cervical check is. Like how every pretty much every woman I know who's given birth has had a cervical check. And they did not tell me that a cervical check is getting fisted. They fist
With a
you
human fist,
with a human,
just
not
right up there. Like, not like a, like,
as opposed to like what, a
tool.
dog
Like,
fist?
a
Oh,
I feel like I want them to make a tool that's, like, the right shape that has sensors on it, so it gets, like, an accurate, like, radar read or something.
yeah,
But
because
they just use a human hand and then
they
feel
just
their
go
way in
all
the
the way up.
darkness.
Yes. And like literally going for my first cervical check at labor and delivery, and this nurse like sticks her whole hand and arm up in me and lifts me up into the pillows. Like, I'm like, oh, fuck. Like, this is so, and I'm like getting shoved up, like lifted up like she's a fucking superhero lifting me up and feeling my cervix. And I'm like, Brian and I are both like, what the fuck
She
just
didn't give you any
happened?
warning? She didn't
No
say, "So I'm
warning.
gonna fist you."
Nope. She's like, I'm going to do a cervical check. It's like, I'm sorry. I've never been fisted in my life. You need like to tell someone that you're going to
We
fit.
need
You
a
can't just
warning.
like
We need a verbal
blindly
warning.
fit. Yeah. Like out of nowhere getting fisted. Not okay for anyone ever. So just in case nobody's told you, I've been
Now
told
you
a cervical
know.
check is uncomfortable. That no, 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 no. That is not the same thing as getting fisted. Okay. It's not. So, cervical check, you get fisted and it's really uncomfortable. But here's the thing that's so stupid is that different people will come in throughout your labor and do a cervical check. And then they are deciding, like, oh, you're 2 centimeters. Oh, you're 3 centimeters. But it's like the person before you, they're feeling blindly what it is. And now this new person is feeling blindly like they don't know what the last person felt. So everybody's just guessing. And that was the big thing that I noticed throughout my whole birth experience was that, I chose to give birth in a hospital um for this first time, maybe only time, who knows. And the hospital and nurses and doctors have this authority, this energy of like they know what is best and what they're doing. But at the same time, everything is guessing. Everything is like, well, you know, you're only 2 centimeters. It's like, well, the last person said I was 2.5. Well, I just measured and you're only two. It's like,
They're just feeling it. They're not even measuring so, like, specifically. So that's why it's frustrating that they're like, this
yeah.
is a medical science, but then they're just like assuming
And that is
based
the
on
whole like,
their perspective.
and that is the whole women in medical field, like energy is like anything that you experience as a woman, there's not enough fucking studies on it or research
Right.
or um you know uh technology that's been created because of the lack of those first two things to actually give you any definitive answers. It's always like, yeah, that's normal. Yeah, we don't know about that. Yeah, there's not enough research. Yeah, this is just how we do it. We fucking fist you and we don't even tell you. And then we're all just
And it's
comparing
not
what
even
it
an
was like.
accurate read. Yeah.
Yeah. So I found that so just like, frustrating because I was at their disposal, right? Like when you are in that birth experience, like you are so vulnerable. You are so like physically raw and just surrendered to whatever your body is going to do. There's no control that you can have over it. And then you have these people who are strangers who have so much say over your experience and what you're going to get or do or have to do or not, or whatever the information that they give you. And you're at their disposal. So basically, long story short, I'm trying to be short, but who knows? um, is they made me stay because they said I couldn't leave since my water had technically broken. And so I was really adamant about wanting to, do a natural birth without Pitocin, without, which is the synthetic oxytocin that they give you to help jumpstart your labor. Right? Like I wanted to do it without being induced and to let my body do its own thing. So I was there for probably like 10 hours and my body wasn't dilating at all. I was like 100% effaced when I first came in. meaning like my cervix, I'm probably going to fuck this up, but it was really thin. And then, but I wasn't dilating at all. I was only ever 1 centimeter dilated. And so every time they would check me, I was 1 centimeter. My doctor wanted to start Pitocin like right away when I first came in. And I was like, no, I want to wait. And so they really just, forced Pitocin on me after that 10 hours. They told me I had to either do that or I had to leave. And, which I was like, wait, I can leave? Like you told me I literally couldn't. Um, so I decided like, okay, let me start just a little bit of Pitocin, see if it jumpstarts things. And I had done hypnobirthing, which I highly recommend. It definitely helped a lot of, my experience, getting through my experience. Um, and I hate that I even have to use those words, getting through my experience, but for me, that was the reality. And I think for a lot of people, that's the reality. Even though my whole intention was going into it being really present, wanting to get the most I could out of this incredible experience. So I started the Pitocin and I ended up doing Pitocin for 10 hours without an epidural, without anything at like a level 16. So they start you out at a 2 and then every 30 minutes they up it. Um, and
And I
so
didn't know this about Pitocin, but the contractions that it makes are much more painful and intense than your natural contractions would be. So
yeah, because it's
having
not
that
your natural
Pitocin,
body
right,
contracting, it's like something forcing you to contract. And
right.
so, and I think that that was, a big part of um my grief with my birth experience was that I felt like it happened to me, like it was forced upon me versus like something that happened through me and my body was naturally doing. But I doing the hypnobirthing, it really helped me to, do that 10 hours of Pitocin contractions, but eventually I hit like uh I feel like I can't do this anymore, which a lot of people say like that's a sign that you are, almost there, that you're like 10 centimeters and that it's time to push. It's like you feel like I can't do this anymore. Feel like you have to poop, like all of those things I was feeling. And I was like, okay, this is like it's must be time. And so they did a cervical check again, and I was only 2 centimeters dilated. I was like, what the fuck? Like, so
Which
disheartening.
how much are you supposed to be?
10. And then it's
Uh-huh.
time to push. Yeah. So I was only 2 and I'd been on Pitocin for 10 hours
It was
and
like
like
so
having such
disappointing. Like,
intense
how could that even
contractions.
be?
I had been like mentally, spiritually like tapped in. I was like on the ball. I was listening in my headphones to Dana's written me some songs on my birthday. And I would literally listen to your voice, Dana, and just like sob, cry on the ball, but nobody else could hear what I was listening to. And I was just like on the ball, just like tears flowing. And that was a really spiritual experience for me because it was just like, these are songs that you wrote for me, years ago, and like your voice and your frequency of your voice is just so magic powerful, and like we met in school for music, and then I'm like here going through the hardest thing I've ever done, and then like you were there with your voice, like time travel, like exactly what I needed to hear. And yeah, it just
Immediate
got me
tears.
through.
I'm sobbing.
I
But
know.
please continue.
And it got me through, and it was like, this is the biggest gift in my life, like you're the biggest gift in my life, like one of them. Um and yeah, and it was like, this is, it was just one of those moments of like, this is why we chose each other. um and yeah, you were really there for me in that. And um anyways, listening to that on the ball, and there were so many things, like I'm gonna take it to a funny place because um this is just what it was in the moment. Like I would have such a like emotional, like I'm getting through this, I'm fucking powerful, like everything's happening for a reason, I can do this, to like swing all the way over to, I have like, I'm in so much pain, I need to fart, and like everybody here is in this room and everything needs to come out of me because I cannot keep this in. Like literally announcing there, like, I need to fart, like looking my husband in the eye, like as I fart because it's so painful that I'm like, babe, I'm gonna fart right now. And he's like, it's okay, babe, you can. And we're like eye to eye, and I'm like letting out a fart super slowly because it hurts.
Oh.
Like
Oh.
that shit is real. And
Yeah.
also like And he was just like, right. And I was like, I can't, right after, I'm like, I can't believe I stared you in the eye, in the soul as I farted. He's like, I know. We're like dying laughing all the way to the other end of the spectrum of like, wait, just found out all of this hasn't gone anywhere. I'm only 2 centimeters dilated, right? Like there's
Yeah.
all of this side of the spectrum that you're swinging on, like funny, real moments that are like, nobody told
And
me that
it's
I'd be
just
staring into my soulmate's eyes while I fart. Also, like super spiritual, emotional moments of like time traveling with you and with music and all the things. And then to the other side of like feeling completely defeated and
and it's
like
such a long
nothing's really
time
happening.
frame. Like 10 hours, like when you were in labor and I had my altar out for you both and everything, and it's just like 10 hours, and that's not even like that's just the first glimpse of the story. 10
Yeah.
hours. Like it's such a long time. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Such
Like
a
that's
long
like an
time, especially
eternity.
because my contractions with Pitocin were every 2 minutes. So it's like 10 hours and every 2 minutes of that 10 hours was like
Right.
so intense,
Right.
which is just crazy. So found out that I was only the 2 centimeters. Um, Decided like I can't do this anymore. I have to get an epidural. So I go to get the epidural. That shit's fucking intense too. But my nurse, who I had a great day nurse, night nurses, that's a whole other story. But my day nurse was incredible. And she, which I'm not hating on night nurses, but my night nurses, okay, they were really fucked up. But my day nurse, Melissa, she was amazing. And she's like, talking me through all the things that you have to do for the epidural, and I have to stay really still, and like she's going to sit me on this table and raise it up, and she's going to be right in front of me helping me stay still, and like the anesthesiologist is going to come in, this is what you're going to feel, a poke, and then it's going to be numb and blah 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 blah, right? And Brian's like standing, sitting back there watching everything, because he's like, if you have to go through it, I can at least watch it and bear witness to what you go through. Like, I'm not going to look away. I'm like, okay, thank you. And let's do this. So the anesthesiologist, goes to do the epidural, and my whole left side of my body shoots forward, like flings forward out of my control. And I scream and I instantly like start bawling. And the anesthesiologist, like, oh, like, I don't think I hit a nerve. And she's like, can you move your toes? Can you move your hands? And I'm like moving it. I'm like sobbing. And she's like, yeah, I don't think that there's any nerve damage. And like, I'm thinking like, I just waited, 20 hours now at this point to not have an epidural, and I finally give in, and now I might have like nerve damage in my spine. Like, what the actual fuck? And I'm sobbing, and the nurse is standing there in front of me, like literally wiping each tear that falls from my face with a tissue, like catching each one. And I'm like, I'm sorry, I just need to cry. Like, I just need to get this out. And she's like, it's okay. And so I'm like sobbing, and I'm like, I'm also crying because it's so sweet that you're catching every single tear. And she like starts crying too. And we just like had a bonding moment. But Brian's freaked the fuck out because it was just so shocking,
Scary.
and scary. And so I get the epidural, and then of course it didn't work on one half of my body. So the whole time my legs were so numb that I couldn't move them. So you would think that like that it was working everywhere, but my legs were so numb I couldn't move them. They almost hurt, they were so numb. But I could still feel all the contractions on one half of my body. So I just kind of was like, okay, this is just gonna be what it's gonna be. Like, I'm just gonna be here and feel the contractions, and that's fine. Like, I've been doing it, I can keep doing it. I have no choice. And so then they do another check, and she's like, you're still at 2, but now I can feel that you have another sac of water that hasn't broken. Like, you'd been leaking from the top of, you know, the sac, and now like we can actually fully pop your water. I also can feel some scar tissue. So I think once your water's fully broken, then her head will push on your cervix enough for you to dilate, and it'll work out and massage out that scar tissue. And I'm like, okay, so the whole reason why you're pushing Pitocin was because you didn't want me to have infection, but now because my water didn't actually fully break, there was no risk of infection. I didn't need to do Pitocin. I could have gone home and labored, blah blah blah. Whatever, it was meant to be what it was meant to be. I'm like coming to terms with that, but popped my water, and then they were like, we're going to come check you in like 4 or 5 hours, see where you're at, dilation wise. So I do another like 3 hours of feeling half of my body with the contractions and doing the hypnobirthing and trying to get like rest in that hypnotic state. Um, and then I'm like, I feel like it's like there's so much pressure. I need to get another check. They check me. I'm 10 centimeters dilated. So in 3 hours, I went from a 2 to a 10. They're like, oh shit, we got to get your doctor. It's time. Like, it's time to push. We're doing this. And then my doula comes up and she's like, okay, Shayna, like now is when it really begins. And I'm like, I'm sorry, what?
What
Like
did you
I'm
just
in,
say to me?
she's like the pushing, like, some people are pushing for an hour, some people are pushing for 3 hours. Like this is where you got to really just get your strength and push and, get her out and all that. And I'm like, okay, like what the, like, okay. I thought I was already in it, but here we go. And so I'm so exhausted by this point. I have nothing to give, but yeah, I can, since I can feel my contractions, I know when to push, and that's really what I wanted, was to be able to feel like when it was time to push and my body, wanted to push, but at the same time they were contractions that were happening to me versus like my body's natural contractions, because I still was on pitocin at like a level 16. So I felt them, and then I would be like, okay, it's time to push, and I'm supposed to do like 3 pushes, but I kept doing like 4 because I was like, I am getting this baby out now. And the doctor was like, wow, like each push you are actually making movement, like great job, keep going. And then in between pushes, like in between contractions, you take a little rest until the next one comes. And Dana had made me a playlist of a bunch of random songs for this whole birthing experience, and there was a bunch of songs on it that I didn't know. So I kept saying to Brian, like, skip the song, I don't know it, like I didn't have an emotional connection to it, right? And so he'd be like, okay, you need to skip it. And then like it'd be time to push again, and then you know a song would come on that I'd be like, oh, I love this song. And then I'd be like, oh, I wonder if this is like what she's gonna like. It's fine to leave this on, maybe she'll be born to it. And pushing, and they kept being like, great, like we see her head, she's almost here. But then like I would be thinking like, okay, like this is the time. And nope, like every time they'd be like, great job, you're almost there. But like I'd still have to keep pushing forever. It felt like that I wanted to ask them, like, how many more pushes? Like, is it 10 more pushes? Because if it's 10, I can do it. But if it's 30 more pushes, I literally think I'll die. Like I have no energy, so beyond exhausted that and I've literally felt like I might die because I'm that exhausted. And as a projector, you know what that feels like in general, to be so exhausted that you think you're going to die. It was literally that times 100 that I was like, how does any non-energy being ever give birth? Like truly, like I'm just so tired at this point. And I know not every birth is, 29 hours of labor. But yeah, I just kept pushing. I felt everything. It was amazing. This was a part of the experience that was truly like I was in awe of myself and my strength, but also getting to push her out was really special. And then like they keep saying like, okay, like we see her head, she's almost there, da da da. And I'm thinking like, okay, um, when is she coming out? Like I might die. And then I hear Roxy say, oh my gosh, it's their wedding song. And Harvest Moon came on, and everybody in the room starts crying. Like my doula, the doctor, who I don't like, the nurses, like everybody in the room is like, oh my gosh, they start crying. And I'm like, and Lexi's like, my doula is like, okay, we got this. Like, you got this, Shayna. Let's go. Let's push. And so I pushed her out during our wedding song. And I just remember like her little face like coming out of me, which was the craziest thing ever, and like looking around the room, moving her head like this little freaking alien just came out of me. Cause up until that point, it's like it's so physical that you're not like, I don't know, it's hard to like put a face to the thing that's happening to you. And so seeing her face come out of me was like, what the fuck? Like, we just did this and we did it together and she did so great. And they were like, going to put her up on me, but her umbilical cord was so short that I kept trying to pull her up to my chest. And the nurses were like, hold on, hold on, hold on. Cause I wanted to let all of the blood come out of the umbilical cord before we cut it. And so I didn't know though, I was in such a altered state that I just they kept trying to cover me with like my gown for modesty or something because I think there were some male nurses somewhere. I don't know, but I just was like ripping that shit off, ripping everything, trying to get her like skin to skin as much as I could, like even on my stomach. And then yeah, they moved her up and she was not breathing great, but they're like, no, she's just calm because she's on her mom. And I was like, no, I think something's wrong. So then they NICU rushed in, they checked her and they pulled like, I don't even know, a whole vial of amniotic fluid out of her lungs. And then she was crying and it was fine, latched her right away. That's been the biggest blessing. And yeah, but then it was 10 o'clock at night and time to go into our room. And you're not allowed to have visitors at night. So we go into our room and we're completely left alone with this new baby. I had torn it. I actually tore my urethra, which is super rare. It's like 0.03% of the population tears their urethra. Most people tear their perineum if they tear. I tore my urethra in like some sides of my vaginal wall because she was a big baby. All of my doctors beforehand kept saying like, she's on the smaller side. She's, a small baby. You should have a lot of amniotic fluid. But then they were wrong. She was 8 pounds, 9 ounces, 21 inches long. Like she was a long baby and big. And I'm a small person. And so, yeah, she came out and I ripped. And so, getting back into our hospital room and having no support there, I was in so much pain. And the nurses were like, if you need to go to the bathroom, call us. We're going to help you go to the bathroom. I'm like, okay. And I'm so exhausted. I hadn't slept in 3 days. I just did the hardest thing I've ever done. I'm in so much pain. And then I have this baby who wants to be latched, like literally the whole 24/7. Like she does not want to lay down anywhere. We could not set her down in her little bassinet thing. And the doctors won't let you sleep with her on you. So I wasn't sleeping at all. So I asked the doctors to come help me go to the bathroom. And it was so painful. I was like sobbing, crying, like I can't do this. I literally can't do this. And the nurse, like without even looking at me, back to me is like, if you don't go to the bathroom, I'm gonna have to put a catheter in you. And I was like, I tore my urethra. You're not putting a catheter in me. Like there's like what the actual fuck? Like no sympathy at all.
Just a
And
threat.
just a threat. Yeah. And like when you're in
Crazy.
such a vulnerable and powerless state, like feeling like so powerless, right? Like all of this stuff is happening to you. Like I literally can't pee without like, I'm not talking like tears, like actually like sobbing, crying, screaming. Like it was so painful. And when somebody's so powerless, to then threaten them is just so mean and traumatizing that I just like, it was really fucked up. So anyways, we got through that and then eventually got to go home. I think in the 2 days that we were in the hospital, I'd slept an hour total. And yeah, it was great to be able to have Roxy, Brian's mom, come the next morning, but having that first night, like literally didn't sleep at all, still so exhausted. I just kept thinking like, this isn't physically possible yet I'm being forced to do it. Like, it's not like, this is unreasonable. Like, this is not like, like, and then there's that messaging of like, well, everybody does it. Everybody's born. This is normal for being a woman. It's hard. Like, childbirth is hard. And I just kept thinking, like, it doesn't have to be this hard. Like, there can be more support. There can be more resources. There can be, you know, um, places and people and things to come in. Like, And there's just not, because it's normal and because women endure and because women are so strong, yet they've been shoved down their fucking throats their whole lives that they are the weaker sex. Like, it's just, I found myself feeling so enraged that our, for thousands of years, women have been treated as lesser and weaker when it's so blaringly obvious that they are so much stronger. It's insane. And they don't have a choice to be that strong, right? Like, your baby is crying and you are bleeding and you are, just went through like the equivalent of being in a car accident. And yet you don't have a choice. You have to get up. You have to work and do the work to help this baby. And you do it, but the strength that requires, that you don't get to choose, is insane. It's huge. And, I kept thinking about Brian, like, in this postpartum time, like, he got sick at one point and he, took NyQuil, and it was like, okay, like, he's sick, like, can't wake him up tonight. Like, he took NyQuil, he's unavailable. And I kept thinking, like, must be nice. Like, okay, I'm gonna take NyQuil tomorrow night. And so I just get the night off. But like, women don't get that luxury of being sick or making the choice to not wake up or to not step in and do what is needed. Like, they have to because they're breastfeeding, or maybe if you're not, even still, you have to because of whatever circumstances. And the amount of strength that is required from women just to create life, and then to be told that you're weaker and less important, is outrageous to me. Like, so outrageous that it makes me want to like burn the whole world down, how much rage I feel. And so many people are like, well, it doesn't have to be, and women, right, are like, it doesn't have to be about who's stronger, men or women. And it's like, great. Tell all the men that, who have been telling us that we're weaker for thousands of years. Like, it doesn't have to be about who's stronger or weaker. We each have our own roles to play, but it's been made about who's stronger or weaker for thousands of years, and currently still is. And that is the reason why there aren't resources to support women, because it's like, you're weaker, this probably isn't as hard as you're making it out to be. And that is the reason why we don't have like government support or community support, because the patriarchy has told us that we're weaker and we're being dramatic and we're being emotional. And so I just felt so much rage through this experience of, for all women of all time, of how much strength is required. And while I can be told that, to actually experience it and then to have absolutely nothing to support you in not having to be so strong, like, it makes me so angry that I'm like, everybody needs to be talking about how women are fucking superheroes, like, actually. And the whole world should revolve around women and their strength, like, truly, because without them, there wouldn't be a world or humans in existence. So, anyways, get home, and my body, I didn't know this until about 2 weeks in, my body was rejecting my stitches. And this is also something that's super rare, but it meant that I couldn't sit or stand or walk for about 3 weeks um, without excruciating pain. And so trying to nurse laying down, trying to just drink water laying down is hard. Um, and she wanted to be nursed all the time, that for the first week and a half I was sitting up holding her, nursing, and trying to figure out how I'm going to get some sleep holding her. And I didn't know at that time, like, the reason why I was in so much pain was because my body was rejecting the stitches. So every time that I was going to the bathroom, I would literally sob, cry, in so much pain. And Roxy, my mother-in-law, was like, it shouldn't be this painful, like, you're in so much pain, and normal like tears are not this painful, like, something's going on. So I went back to the doctor and she's like, oh, your body is rejecting your stitches. So basically my body was slowly pushing out the stitches through my skin, like, slowly pushing their way out of me. um which was just excruciating as it sounds. And Dana has a friend who this happened to as well. And she's been shot. Like, this sounds like unreal, but she's been shot. And
She
she
got
was like,
shot in the shoulder, and she said that the stitches that were rejecting were twice as painful as getting shot in the shoulder
which is crazy. Cause
by a
I was like,
gun.
am I just weak? Am I just not as strong as other women who have torn and healed? Like, am I being a baby? Like, I was really judging myself for not being able to like stand up and hold my baby. Um, and then finding out that, all of that, it was like, oh, okay, that it's not normally this painful. Okay, that makes more sense. But it led to a whole slew of things. Okay, so then the last thing I want to share that is really real, that is newer information that most people don't really know about is there's obviously a lot of challenges that can come up with breastfeeding. Um, and for me, none of my challenges were about around latching or supply or anything like that. She latched right away. My supply's been great. She's super well fed. She loves to eat. Like, her little sacral generator is eating all the time, which I love. But I have this thing called DMER, which is dysphoric milk ejection reflex, which means that when I am nursing and breastfeeding, I get into a state of dysphoria. I also get really nauseous. Um, and so this dysphoric state, when she was first cluster feeding, 20 hours around the clock, I was in this state all day long, but I didn't know that. I thought I just had really bad postpartum depression, and baby blues, which were super intense in and of themselves. That whole experience is wild, like the emotional toil that you have in those 40 days, like Dana was saying. Um, that was really intense for me. But on top of that, having this demur experience, now that I know what it is, it's like, okay, I'm not going to think about anything while I'm breastfeeding, because I literally can think about something that I love and I hate it while I'm breastfeeding. Like, this meal that I'm eating, I can't eat while I'm breastfeeding because everything sounds awful, sounds horrible. Hate my home, hate my town, hate my work, hate human design, hate literally everything. And then she unlatches and it's like, I love all of those things. Like, I love this meal. Like, where is it? Like, I threw it out because I hated it so much and now I want it again. And so understanding that I get into this dysphoric state when I'm breastfeeding, it's different than most people get into this euphoric state because they get oxytocin. But when you have DMER, your dopamine drops so much that you get into this place where everything just sounds horrible. So now that I know it's totally manageable, but then I didn't know that. And all of this to say, those are all the details. I'm like, I could go on and on. There's so much. But in this journey, it's made me have a lot more respect for women in general. Even my own mother, who, as you know, I don't have a relationship with my mother, and this has really shown me, throughout this whole experience, feeling like, did maybe she feel some of these things? Like, this is so intense. Like, she gave birth to me, having more um understanding and compassion for her, while still not feeling like I need to um lower my boundaries or change my boundaries in any way, has been a big learning experience, and something that I'm observing of how to have compassion and respect for someone while still not fostering a relationship with them, when there's somebody who is so prominent, in your life, like a parent. um so there's a lot of lessons around that, but also a lot of grief around the fact that, in this time, like, I definitely felt in those early days really depressed that I didn't have like family around or people taking care of me that were my family. Like, it was Brian's family, which they've been amazing, don't get me wrong. But there's just little moments where it's like, you're taking pictures and it's really focused on, getting pictures of Brian with the baby. And not that anybody's trying to do that, but you notice like, oh, like, it's just that reminder of like, oh, I am the in-law. You know what I mean? Like there's not somebody there that's like, "Oh my gosh, this is my child having a child," kind of feeling. Which I think that anyone listening who has a strained relationship with a parent can really resonate with, and the pain and the grief that goes into a loss of a parent, that's really reflected, and like almost magnified when you have your own child. It's heartbreaking, but also reminds you how strong you are, and you chose this for a reason. And a lot of this journey has been showing me my own strength, um, whether I want it or not, and like feeling resentful of like, why do I have to always be strong though? Like, why do I have to be like, why can't I be the weak one? Why can't I be the baby that's coddled? And um definitely Brian, my husband, and my mother-in-law have been coddling me in this experience. I'm so grateful for them, but there is always gonna be that sense of loss of my own parents. And being a cycle breaker, requires you to be anew, like forge something new on your own. And that's always going to be painful and feel lonely and feel heartbreaking. But the resilience and the love of yourself that you find and the strength and the things that you build are worth it. Um, yeah, so I'm kind of navigating that and figuring all of that out. And the last thing that I'll say that I think that a lot of people can resonate with is the mom guilt, that people talk about having mom guilt, but for me it's been really dark mom guilt, where I found myself feeling like if I don't, if I'm just feeding her and then, going to go work out or going to go make myself food while somebody else is holding her, like you feel guilty. You feel like, what am I even doing then? Like, why am I even here? Like they could be her mom. Like if she just ate formula, I literally wouldn't be needed. And then it spirals into this whole thing of like I don't need my mom. And like, am I like, what is my purpose here? Like, am I even necessary for her life? And it's like this whole dark little spiral that happens in my experience from mom guilt. And it's not just like a, oh, I feel bad that I'm going to this appointment without her. It's like a, if I can do this without her, then why does she even need me kind of feeling. And with breastfeeding being so challenging in the sense, like for my mental health, my therapist and other people in my life are like maybe you shouldn't breastfeed, maybe you should do formula. And that really stirred like this sense um of depression and dread, feeling like, well, then I'm absolutely not needed. And like, I don't even want to be here then. And I think like saying things like that out loud, um, I think creates more space for people to acknowledge the things that they're feeling. And without it being something that's like scary and like giving power to it, it's almost like it takes power away from it because you realize like how ridiculous that is to say. Um, but also very real. I think that a lot of us moms out there, new moms, can resonate with feeling depressed, can resonate with feeling powerless, can resonate with feeling like they failed, like it should have been, you thought it was going to be this magical thing. And then here you are, like feeling like you're not even needed. You thought this was going to be a reverent experience that was yours. And then you feel like, am I even needed in this experience? um, for me feeling like I thought I had so much strength already and spiritual resilience and like resources with human design and with like all of these experiences that I've had in my guides, and then feeling completely resourceless and like a baby and like I don't know what to do for my mental health or for my physical health or even how to go to the bathroom. Like, it's just, you feel so, um, I felt very defeated. But then, of course, there's the whole other side of the spectrum where I'm like obsessed with my baby and where I feel this profound love for her and where I feel like such a badass for the things that I've done and where I feel like I know that I'm just in this season and that this is what this time is. Um but just not realizing how real and how the small little things each day really do, um they're just so real. Like the defeat in one moment and the victory in the next, right? The like being proud of yourself and then hating yourself. Like the pendulum swings so drastically, and I don't think that it's right or wrong. I don't think that it's like good to have an amazing birth experience and then, amazing postpartum where you just are so overwhelmed with love and feeling so capable and not having postpartum depression. Like, I don't think that that's like the goal as much as we set it is, like, set that for ourselves. And like almost like praise that as like the thing to achieve. I think that having the hard and the raw and the real and the depressive thoughts and all of the things is just as important and magical and juicy as the super highlight reel of giving birth is too. So hopefully me sharing these really real details with you opens up some space for your own journey, and I'm sure that there's so many women out there who have had a similar experience. I definitely think going into another birth, I probably wouldn't do it in a hospital. um, but I don't know, I'm still not sure how I feel about a lot of things, but yeah, I think I'm learning to have a different sort of respect for myself, than I had before giving birth, and allowing myself some grace to be messy and not have all my shit figured out or together. Yeah, it's a whole journey. So that's the longest story long, which we knew it was going to be.
I genuinely feel like I need to stand up and give you a standing ovation, which I won't do because clapping would
Thanks.
be blocked anyways, but I am energetically doing that. I mean, honestly, it's so crazy how the version that most of us get to hear of a birth story, it's so short, it's so summarized, it's so incomplete. And I think to hear, like, you just communicated your story, I think, so beautifully and so honestly and with so much depth. I think it's really powerful. And I think that our voices being not having platforms is part of the reason why people don't understand birth more, why they don't understand postpartum more, why they don't understand life in general more. And even as well as you communicate, our language will always fail to completely share the true perspective, like the full thing. But what you just shared, I think, is a really well communicated and accurate feeling. Like I went on the whole journey with you, and I'm super grateful to get to witness you and admire you and learn from you. Like the whole thing, the highs, the lows, the in betweens, I'm here for that. And that's my favorite thing in life because that is life. You know what I mean? To get the full real thing. And yeah, I really, really, really want to applaud you and thank you for sharing so well.
Yeah, I want to like thank all of the women who have ever given birth, right?
Yeah,
Because it's so different for each and every single person, but also there's
right.
so many similarities in how we feel vulnerable or strong or taken advantage of or forced or, you know, um, feeling powerful in it. There's so many different things that are wrapped up into it. And I'm definitely still learning. Like I'm still in it. And finding my footing within this new space and learning how to love my body, because I felt like my birth experience was something that happened to me. Like I said before, I kept saying, I feel like I'm in the Matrix where like, when they come out of the pods and they're in like so plugged up, like they pull all those tubes and shit out of them, because
Mhm.
I had like an epidural in, and then the blood pressure cuff on, and then a monitoring thing on my belly, and then an
Mm.
IV in, and like a catheter in, and like so many things. Like I felt like I was straight up plugged in like the
And you're
Matrix.
like, none of this is me. It's all like
Yeah.
putting
Like
you
I'm a science project, like a
right.
science experiment. And yeah, it's so interesting. And then coming out of that and being thrust into like being physically disabled, I think that was another huge lesson for me, is like I've never been disabled before. And the powerlessness you feel being disabled, um, I feel like there's a lot that we need to talk about as a collective about being disabled in general. Um, because it's like it really makes you grateful for your health once it comes back, or what you had before. But the weakness that I felt in my body, I felt so, it's so funny. When I was pregnant, I thought I felt like so weak. And then after I gave birth, I was like, I was so fucking strong then. Like I am so weak now that I literally can't drink water sitting up. Like I just felt like I was starting from ground zero, and I have to really rebuild so slowly every single day. And then to be expected, like for women, I'm so privileged to not have to work really, because I worked so much before giving birth and having this platform. And De Luna, like I'm so privileged and grateful, but our societies really aren't set up to support women. We don't have like that village, collective community um, system where so many women are just alone after giving birth, or are thrust back into working after giving birth. And it's criminal. It truly is. And it needs to be fixed. And it's like, how do we fix it? It's such a big fucking thing to take on. And I think that the only way that we get towards any sort of change is by talking about it, and
100%.
sharing it, and actually validating, like, no, full stop. This is not something that works. Like if I didn't have, the luxury of being able to be home, if I didn't have Brian's mom here half of the week, like every day that I'm here by myself with her, I literally have a mental breakdown once a day where I'm like, this is not how it's meant to be. This is not a one person job, especially the person who is disabled and like physically weak. Like if you have a migraine, you stay home from work and you lay in bed all day. Like a migraine, like let alone going through something where you are basically in a car accident. That's what it's like. The equivalent of giving birth is like being in a car accident. And yet the next day you have to fucking work your ass off to keep this child alive. And it's like, the math isn't mathing. Like it does not add up. And
100%.
my heart breaks for all of the women who, the strength that is required to not only go through this whole experience, but then do it all on your own or go back to work. Like I literally don't know how single mothers exist. Like I don't
Right.
know how they didn't just fucking die. Literally, like that sounds so harsh, but it's seems impossible to me. Impossible. It's like, how is this something that's accepted and just like people have just done and gritted through? It's criminal.
And the resources are there. The change can be made. It's just that we don't collectively realize that it needs to be changed,
Yeah. It's
right?
like one person being home is fine.
We don't realize that it's so important. We need to allocate new resources to that area. And we don't realize that this change needs to be made or the resources need to be reoriented because people just don't know. The average person just doesn't know, right? They genuinely think that it's not that bad. And also, I was thinking as you were speaking, like the strength of a woman and a woman a woman's body being like this super human, like honestly miraculous, incredible superhuman strength. We all love the superheroes. When we watch a show, we like worship this superhero that can do things that other people can't do, and they can go through such immense pain that a building can crash on top of them and they can come up through the rubble. We stand up and cheer for those superheroes that are largely men or they're fictional characters, but we don't stand up and cheer for women.
Yeah.
Like, if we understood and knew, like really knew as a collective what women go through, then we would. The violence that happens against women would have to change. It would have to stop. If people appreciated their own birth story, like every single person who's been born, which is every person, if they knew the details of their birth story in this much detail, they would have such a different reverence for life itself, for the sacredness of women, for the strength that it takes, for the miracle that it is for them to even be alive. Like, I
Yeah.
just really feel that we have been completely blind because voices have had no platform. They have not been heard. They have not even been voiced to people in their own lives, let alone on a megaphone out into the collective.
Yeah, because they've been gaslit into oblivion of like it's normal. So you don't need to talk about it. Like it's, you're complaining. You're being too much. You're being too emotional. You're being such a baby, all the things. So,
And I wanted to say that I think we should have more conversations about, I want to talk about the incredible empowerment and like success story of your work being an entrepreneur and going through maternity leave, because honestly, that's a part of your story that is like so incredible and such a profound success story. I really want people to hear more about it, but I feel like we should dedicate like a whole nother episode to that, because we talked a lot about like the physical parts of your journey, but that like work aspect and like the way that we set things up for Day Luna. And I just feel like it's really inspiring
mm,
and almost like incredible to hear like the way that you've been able to create this career for yourself that works so well for you as a projector for your unique design and life and navigating into motherhood. Like, I genuinely feel like that part of the story is incredible and so inspiring for people. And I feel like the kind of change that people need to hear that story to be able to implement into their own lives.
yeah, yeah. We'll definitely do a podcast about that, part two or another
Part
time.
two.
But
Yeah.
um, I do want to say that if you haven't seen pictures of my baby, she's literally the cutest baby on earth, and I'm not biased. Maybe a little, but we'll post it when we maybe share this on our Instagram. So if you don't follow us yet, check us out at Dave Luna on Instagram. But she really is something else. And her sun gate is gate 56, the gate of stimulation. So she is a talker. She's going to have her own podcast or TV show or something. But she truly is like from another freaking planet. And she's such an old soul. Like, I feel like she's like, bitch, with me. Like, all right. Um, yeah, she just knows. She knows all the things. So I can't wait for everybody here to learn from her as I do. And yeah, the silver lining of everything. Everyone's like, but you got a baby out of it. And it's like, yeah, but also it didn't have to be that hard. Like, that's the main thing that I keep coming back to. It's like there needs to be change. There needs to be resources. There needs to be community. Um, and there needs to be like reverence and respect and support is just the main word that keeps coming, because if you are supported as a mother, then you get to show up as a better mother for that child, and then that child gets to become a better human, which then gets to make better changes in the planet as they grow older. Like, it's all this trickle down effect, and we've been so stuck where we are, I think, because mothers have not had the support, and they haven't been, mentally healthy enough or have the privilege to be able to show up as their best self for their children, or even ask who the fuck they are to begin with. They're just so in it and so overwhelmed by all the physical things that they never even get to ask, like, who am I? What are my gifts? Why am I here? What are these lessons that I'm learning? What are the karmic connections that I have with my children? And the cycle just continues to go on and on and on of people being undereducated about who they are and how they can heal their nervous systems, break cycles, make change. That's where we're moving. That's where we're headed in this new paradigm, is knowing who you are. And then that change can really take effect for our generations to come. Like we've said forever, human design is for the future generations, because when you heal, then your children can heal and then their children can heal. And that's the new cycle that we are working our way towards. But you can't heal if you don't talk about the shit that's hard. Like,
Right.
if you don't talk about your trauma, if you don't feel the anger, if you don't feel the pain, like you're not going to heal. You're going to shove it down. It's going to come back up in some other way that's not going to be beneficial for you or for your children or for your community or whatever. So even though it's awkward, even though it's fucking not polite or whatever to
Mhm.
talk about your depression at the fucking snack table at a party, um it's what people need. And I literally did that last weekend. They were like, how are you doing? How is like, couldn't you just not set her down that whole first month? I was like, no, I actually couldn't pick her up. And it made me feel really bad because Brian changed every diaper and Roxy and Brian held her every single time and would just bring her to me to feed. And I felt like a nursemaid and I felt like I failed as a parent and it made me really depressed. And they were like, wow. And then actually, I thought that they were going to be like, anyways, but they were like, you know what? Have you ever experienced depression before? And I was like, no, actually, I've only experienced anxiety and panic attacks. And they were like, yeah, when I gave birth, this experience happened to me. And that was my first time experiencing depression and da da da. And they let me know all of these details about their life that they never would have shared before. That and we now I feel so much closer to that person who literally I didn't even know before that. So just sharing that as an example of like, yes, it's fucking awkward, but also like creates so much more closeness and meaning into our lives than talking about like what stroller you bought and like if they're sleeping
Mhm.
through the night, because none of that shit matters. Like they're not gonna sleep through the night until they do, and then they're not going to again until they do. Like the things that matter are like what you feel, what you say, what's been actually affecting you, how you can show up for yourself and for your child. Like that's the stuff that matters, the heart of it.
I saw this quote the other day that was like, someone who doesn't go deep can only really give surface level or artificial love, but real love comes from someone who has faced and integrated their shadow. I was thinking about that, like the people in my life that are afraid to look deeper or afraid to address darkness, and how oftentimes I feel like their love is just like thin or something like that, like hollow. And
Yeah.
that the people who fully own and address and move through and integrate their shadow, it oftentimes then leads them to be someone who gives the deepest, juiciest, most robust love. And I think that that is something that our children deserve. It's something that we deserve to feel and receive from one another. And it just brings me back to the fact that this conversation is bigger than it applies to more people than just those who have given birth or who want to give birth. It applies to
Yeah.
everyone. Like, and even if you choose to not have kids, the kids that are being born are going to be the next generation of our human family. And even if they're not your kids, they're still going to be your human family that make the changes and choices and add to the collective consciousness of your future world. And is the love that their parents gave them real because they were able to embrace their shadow? Is the love that their parents gave them solid because their parents got the support they needed when they were born or not? Like it all matters so much. It's like, once again, bringing me back into that idea of the loop, the cycle, the circle, and all of us being on it together.
Yes. Ah, so beautifully said. I love every single person that's listening to this. You are our soul family, truly. You dive deep and you go there with us. Thank you for making it this far. If you did, for seeing us, for creating this space where we can share so vulnerably and be met there. So many of you, I feel like when you reach out and we connect in such a real way because of this podcast and because of who you are and how you've been drawn to this, like you are my people, you are my friends. I'm like, I can't wait to talk to my friends today.
Same.
Like truly. So we're back. We're going to be diving into a bunch of other things, but I'd love to hear, if you feel called to share your birth stories on Instagram and DM us, or even on our post. Like, I think when we post this, we should post something that you can share your birth story on, because it's powerful and we would love to hear it. So we're sending you so much love. We're sending you a lot of grace to just be easy on yourself and to let yourself feel all the things, and maybe a little bit of courage to share whatever it is you're feeling with whoever's around you today. Even if it's a little awkward, the awkwardness brings you further, brings you deeper. So we're sending you so much love, and we'll see and talk to you soon. Thank you for tuning in with us today. If you like this video, be sure to like and subscribe to follow along and learn more about human design.